All right, well, we're here at the Slanger Mansion, and I'm here with Joel Jamieson and John. And these guys are, they came into town for what reason? Why are you guys here in Sacramento?
Working with the local fire department, helping them get their firefighters ready to go out and save some lives, hopefully.
Yeah. Is it a big thing to be, well conditioned as a firefighter? I mean, imagine carrying, they have like, heavy weights they got to carry, hoses, stuff like that, right?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing that he and I are talking about is how much physical and mental stress is involved in heat. I mean, these guys are wearing, 20 to 50 pounds of gear. They're out in the California wildlands. They're hiking up hills for hours on end, putting out fires.
A lot of fires out here.
Oh yeah, exactly. It's brutal, right? So just teach them how to manage that whole process, how to prepare for it better. Because they're, if you're not physically prepared, you go out, you're in 100+ degree heat, and you're hiking up hills for hours on end. That's just gonna happen.
Well, guess what, my friend? We will all die. We will all be in a lot of pain. It's all coming our way. It's inevitable. It's part of life. But in the meantime, you might as well be a fucking savage and live your life the way you want to live. And you might as well put your best effort and your best foot forward and train like a motherfucker.
Your background's in MMA, right?
Yeah.
And have you trained firefighters or military and stuff like that before?
Yeah, I've worked with a bunch of military guys. We did some stuff with the Navy SEAL and some local Rangers and a few law enforcement guys here and there. And really, there's a lot of commonalities. It's lots of mental stress. It's lots of unpredictability in the environment. It's lots of random things you're not going to encounter in normal sports. It's unpredictable is the biggest thing.
Is there specific drills that you guys would incorporate with firefighters, police officers, stuff like that?
Yeah, a big part of it is combining the psychological aspect of training, energy systems and all that together, because you can't separate the two.
Right.
And so the training is an opportunity for them to develop skills that they can use when they go out and do firefighting, so that they can perform really well, because they're under a lot of stress there, and obviously trainings can be really stressful, so you can replicate certain things there, so that when they go out in those situations, it's not unique and it's not novel, and they don't basically fold under the pressure.
How have you gotten so deep into strength training? It's very common just to go in a gym, throw around some weights, bodybuild, power lift, those kinds of things. But how have you gotten so deep into this from a coaching standpoint?
That's a good question. So my business partner's background is, he was a Navy Special Warfare, and then I do more like ski mountaineering and things like
that. That sounds intense.
It is.
Yes. So, and we work with a lot of special operations guys, preparing them for selections courses, or if they're operational already, just maintaining their ability and staying healthy. So, preparing those guys and what we do, we realize you can't separate those two aspects. And a lot of guys end up, burning out and getting hurt a lot because they're not, they're not separating those two, and they are separating those two, and they're not taking the right approach to develop their psychological skill set along the way. So you really can't separate those two if you're trying to prepare and go through, a really difficult, strenuous, physical and psychologically strenuous.
How about for yourself? How'd you kind of get in all this stuff?
Well, you're working with combat athletes. It's a mental game, right?
Right.
It's the same thing. You're out in the field. You're out fighting fires. You're out fighting, for your life, for other people's lives, and there's such a massive amount of mental stress, and two different people can approach the same situation from two different perspectives. And the reality is, the person that tries to make a hard job easy, to steal his line, is going to last a lot longer than someone who tries to make an easy job hard. So a lot of it comes down to the perception of the environment is the environment as far as your brain, your body is concerned. So it's just looking at how does the body react, how does the brain react, and trying to put those pieces together to help people be prepared for whatever it is they're trying to do.
How do you have them be prepared for situations, that are not only strenuous, but strength-wise and physically, but also stress-wise, and just situations where they're literally put to the ultimate test, almost like in battle type thing?
No, I mean, again, a lot of it comes down to, like you said, training is an opportunity to develop the skills it takes mentally to handle that sort of stress. So he has a whole program, stress inoculation training, that he can go in more in depth about, but it's using training to expose them to stressful situations, and then coaching them and teaching them to be better in those situations, to be self-aware, and using training as an opportunity to get better at those things. So he can,
it's basically a vehicle where you're using training, because different types of training stimulation. So if I'm going to do aerobic or endurance work, I know that I'm going to have a certain type of fatigue involved with that, then my nutrition going into it. So you can simulate a lot of the same kinds of stressors that they're going to have out in the field in a training environment while you're giving them those training that physiological capabilities as well. So you can do that in a very graded way where you're slowly introducing different levels of stress and then having success with that, and you're giving them focused things to work on during that training experience, so that they're developing those psychological tools. And like I said, over time you're just gradually, just like any kind of training stress, introducing greater and greater levels of stress, whether that's through, again, nutrition, increased intensity, whatever it is, over time, and then they can develop those skills, which then transfer very directly to what they do on a day-to-day basis.
Do you do things like maybe have them, pre-exhaust their body by doing something specific, like maybe like sprinting or some sort of running, or maybe even jumping rope or something like that, and then go to another exercise, so that way that their mind is staying sharp and they got to concentrate on, bracing themselves for a deadlift or something like that? Is that the kind of training you guys end up doing, or is it quite different than that?
It's kind of part of it. It depends what you're doing. So, like a good example would be,
or maybe mixing fatigue with coordination or something along those lines.
So like a lot of what they'll have to do is they don't know the demands of their job. They could have to go. It depends on who you're talking about here and the specific context of the situation. But generally speaking, they don't know if they're going to have to go for a short period of time, a long period of time, have variable intensities throughout whatever activity they're doing. So, like a good example, what we do to help develop their along with, instead of just going out and doing basic aerobic stuff, we'll give them, as part of a protocol, okay, you're going to do this in a fasted state, you're going to do this first, so they haven't eaten for 20 hours, and then you're doing aerobic stuff in a specific zone, and then you're giving them maybe open-ended exercise where you're going to go for a certain duration of time, or you're just going to go from this point to that point. They don't know how long the exercise is going to last for, and by doing that, they have to learn how to cope with different types of stress that they're probably not used to, but that they're going to face at some point in the future.
Cool. And then how does the heart rate variability play into some of this?
One of the biggest things you see in tactile athletes, in MMA athletes, is just sheer training volume is insane, and they've gotten this idea in their head that the harder you train, the better results you're going to get. So they kill themselves. And it's part of their nature. I mean, they're going out and defending people's lives and rescuing lives.
There's a lot of skills that they need to bring to the table.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
So just overtraining is such a big thing with it, and when you're constantly driving that high intensity over and over again, essentially what happens is your body desensitizes itself to all the stress hormones that are part of stressful environments. And then the problem with that is, because you're desensitized to it, when you go out in the field, you need those skills, you need that adrenaline pumping through your veins, you need the muscles binding to that adrenaline to produce more force. If you've overworked yourself, you can't meet those demands in the field when the time comes. So a lot of it's just education and using stuff like HRV to show people clear results from what they're doing, and making sure they're not pushing past that threshold where they kill themselves in the gym and then they can't go out in the field and actually perform.
It's a concept you've been using for a long time now, right? For the heart rate variability.
Yeah, I mean, I started using heart rate variability back in 2001 or 2002.
Can you explain a little bit on what it is first?
Yeah, so heart rate variability is a technique, more or less, to measure how the brain is controlling the rest of the body through the heart itself. So what it's doing is tapping into that signal, and what we find out is that the brain is constantly regulating how your heart functions based on the stress it's under.
Right.
So when it's under a lot of stress, it beats a certain way. When it's recovered from that stress, it beats a different way, and we're able to distinguish that pattern and understand if people are overtraining, if people are undertraining, if they can push it harder.
So your heart, in a way, is like a little bit of like a book on how your body's doing.
Yeah,
in a way.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, I mean, just think about the fact that your body has to always be pumping. Your heart has to always be pumping. Right. The brain can't let it not do its job of pumping blood, or you're going to die real quick.
Right.
So it's crucial that the brain controls that and regulates it very, very closely. And it's also a window into the entire anti-inflammatory system of the body, which is part of the vagus nerve, which is what we're measuring with HRV. So really, we're getting a lot of information about how much overall inflammation is going on in the body. And when we see decreases in HRV, we know there's more systemic chronic inflammation starting to creep up, and when we see lower HRV, we know the body is able to mitigate and overcome that. So it's not just the heart, we're basically looking at global inflammation and how the brain is perceiving all this and how it's responding to all of it.
There must be so many factors involved in that, correct? Like your nutrition, your sleep must be an enormous part of it, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's sleep, it's nutrition, it's training, it's mental stress, it's the whole picture.
Right.
And that's really what
general lifestyle.
Yeah, absolutely. And see, that's the thing, is people they over compartmentalize, and they think, oh, I was stressed at work, or I was stressed in life. So I'm going to go take out that stress at the gym. Well, stress is additive. It's cumulative.
Yeah.
Just because you go to the gym and work out hard doesn't mean that has nothing to do with your daily life before that, or your sleep.
And training is stressful.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a form of stress. I mean, it can make you feel better, but it is a form of stress, correct?
Yeah, exactly. So again, it's a really good tool to just help people understand how much training do I really need. It's the right amount, so that I don't push myself past that breaking point where I'm constantly not feeling great. I'm not improving. I feel like I'm working hard, and they get in this cycle of overworking just slightly to the point they can't respond quite the way they should, but then they feel like they have to do more, so then they do more, and it just snowballs.
Right.
So
what's the biggest thing you've seen, or either one of you guys have seen, with being able to help somebody recover better, with being able to help somebody kind of fine-tune their training, somebody that's overtrained? Is their heartbeat faster or slower, or
so essentially, the more well-conditioned you are aerobically and the more higher HRV you have, the lower your heartbeat beats in general, but the more overall stress you're able to adapt and respond well to. So you can train more and recover from more. You can handle more life stress without it causing problems. You can, be in varying sleep conditions. You can have mental stress.
That's very
and
interesting.
Your body can cope with it
It's not a stagnant thing.
No.
It's something that can change over time.
Yeah, absolutely. Your HRV changes constantly based on what you do, and as you train, as you get in better shape, we see HRV go up, and it means you can handle greater workloads. You can handle higher levels of training. You can handle more mental stress.
Right.
So as a single number, HRV correlates to life expectancy better than just about any other metric we have. So it's a number that's constantly changing. It's something that if you care about your life expectancy and your health, it's a very important number to know, because how often you really getting cholesterol checked, or how often you getting your triglycerides or whatever. You're not getting those things checked very frequently. But HRV you can do every day in 2.5 minutes.
How do you you can ask them this, but how do you find that number? Just ask them how do you find what the
How do you find the magic number, sort of?
No, what is how do you find what how do you test it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. How do you test your HRV?
Yeah, so I developed a system called BioForce HRV, and it's just a little chest strap that you wear, connects to your mobile phone, takes 2.5 minutes, reads your heart rate, and then does some mathematical calculations, and then boom, spits out a number for you. And again, that number over time is a measure of work capacity, is a measure of your overall ability to cope with stress.
If you're overtrained, does it tell you go home, eat pizza?
It might, but probably it'll just tell you to go home and relax, or maybe eat less pizza would be more like it.
Yeah. Does it give you that kind of information? Kind of like it might spit out information about the way that you should train or something like that, or give you an idea on how you should work out?
Yeah, I mean, that's what we're working towards right now. It gives you 3 colors. It gives you a green, which means you're in a green light. You can push your body. It's ready to handle it.
You can go ahead.
You can go ahead, yeah. And amber means, look, you're a bit fatigued. You probably want to be submaximal. Right. And then it gives you red, which means you're really fatigued and you really want to take a day off or do some sort of active recovery region. Now, what we're working on is exactly what you're saying. The next generation stuff is we're going to be able to give people training programs that automatically adjust and adapt.
I was talking in the future and I didn't even know it.
Yeah.
I was talking ahead of everything.
So exactly what we're working on here is we want to come up with a way for experts like yourself to give powerlifters, or guys like myself or John, to give programs to people, and then let the technology do the work.
Yeah.
Because right now, lots and lots of people are wearing wearables, or lots of data being collected from Fitbits to Microsoft bands to sleep trackers to HRV, and it's just a lot of information that people really don't know what to do with, even the trainers and coaches that are looking at all this stuff. So that's what we're coming in, right? We want to simplify that process and let the system, basically let a computer analyze the data, tell you what it means, and then let you make better decisions, better choices.
Have you guys, in my experience, I've noticed, going to the gym and you pick up a 45-pound plate and it feels like it's 90 pounds. Or you go to do a certain lift for the day, you go to lift, you're working up to a certain weight and you do, let's say 315, and you thought for sure that it was like 405 because it just felt like there's a ton of weight on there.
Yep.
Have you guys experienced that with some of the athletes? Sometimes maybe they have a green light to go ahead and maybe they're still fatigued, or have you noticed, being able to kind of manage those kind of things better through, paying attention to some of these things you're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, you absolutely will see the trends coming. So generally speaking, when you go in the gym and stuff feels heavy, it's because your body's not getting the hormonal response you want. So people have this idea that bigger muscles produce more force, which is true as long as the hormones are binding to the muscles to cause more force to happen. So for example, there's been research where they bombarded your body with overtraining by doing 10 1RMs and squats every day for 2 weeks. In that time period, people's strength went down 5% and their power went down 30% because they found the receptors in the muscle that bind to adrenaline decreased by 37%. So it's the same thing as over binge eating sugar. If you overeat sugar, your insulin sensitivity goes down the drain. It's the same thing with stress hormones. When you bombard your body with too much stress, your sensitivity to those hormones shoots down the drain. And so what happens is you go to lift a heavy weight, or what you feel is really heavy, and you're not able to put as much strength and power into it because you don't have that stress response that you need. And that's why people take a couple weeks off in the gym, they come back stronger. It's because they were chronically overworking to the point that they weren't able to get that stress hormone response. A couple weeks of rest, boom, stress response restored, power, strength goes up. So
In your experience, have you guys, worked with athletes where you kind of get them to the point where they almost always kind of have the green light?
Yeah, I mean, more it's just used as it's an objective marker. In other words, whatever they do on a day-to-day basis, when they take that test, they can't influence. So if they didn't sleep well, they didn't do good recovery, whatever happened, it can influence that number essentially. If that number is what it is in the green light or whatever it is. So it helps people build some self-awareness to validate when they're feeling a certain way, and over time. And then more importantly, it's not that they always need to be in green. The numbers will improve over time, especially with athletes to work with, because they need to have a large aerobic base, and the number itself is going to be a reflection of how aerobically fit you are to an extent. But generally speaking, all it does is it helps people build more self-awareness and then manage their training volume a lot more effectively and intensity, because like I said, most of the guys we work with, that's their biggest issue, is that they kind of get stuck in this cycle where they're never training hard enough to recover, but they're never also taking it easy enough either. So they're kind of stuck in this middle land and they don't really ever improve. So if you can use something like HRV to help them manage themselves and help you as a coach give them data and get buy-in into the program, and all of a sudden they're taking it easy when they need to, and then they can train harder and they improve much more.
Joel, don't you have some sort of crazy test you put a lot of people through? I saw you using like the ladder and a bunch of different things.
Yeah. So we've got a conditioning circuit.
You got your own form of torture, right?
Yeah, exactly. So we have a little conditioning circuit we put people through. They basically go through a series of 6 self-powered exercises, from the Woodway Force to Jacob's Ladder, Versa Climber, bike rower. And essentially what you're doing is seeing how fast you can get through certain distances. And we've had MMA world champions, we've had James Fitzgerald won the CrossFit Games, came through and gave it a shot, and we've had athletes from all over the place doing. The ironic thing is you'll never guess which athletes have done the best on it. Take a guess.
Which athletes have done the best on it? I don't know, maybe weightlifters, bodybuilders, I don't know.
No, those are the worst. No, it's actually ultimate frisbee players.
Frisbee?
Of all things, guys that run up and down the frisbee field, throwing the frisbee around, have consistently outperformed MMA fighters, CrossFit athletes, endurance athletes.
It's kind of similar to like soccer. Right?
Yeah, it's similar to soccer, but they're just sprinting up and down the field and throwing the frisbee and jumping a lot more.
Is that maybe because they have a little bit of a background in, they probably do marathons and triathlons and stuff?
It's because they sprint up and down the frisbee field non-stop for 2 hours straight.
They have a background in smoking weed, probably.
Yeah, exactly.
He's a frisbee thrower.
Yeah, I mean, I was actually
I was amazed. Enhancing.
Yeah, exactly. I was amazed. I didn't expect those guys to do much of anything, and they came in the gym and blew away all the records we had, and we're beating all the MMA stars and ultimate frisbee.
That's crazy. How many different sports have you had? You had football players, all different kinds.
Yeah. We've had every major sport you can probably think of. We've had to try the test at least once.
All right, so I guess if you want to be in shape, then you do ultimate frisbee.
Yeah, you go, trust me.
The other UFC.
Exactly. Blows my mind, but what it is.
How does the test itself work? Is it like 1 minute on each thing, or?
No, so we have a set distance to each thing. So you have to go, 1,000 yards or 1,000 meters on the rower. Right. You've got 500 feet the Versa Climber. You've got 500 feet on the.
So it's kind of a race against the clock.
It's a race against the clock, exactly. It's how fast can you do each thing. You get 60 seconds rest in between. It's just get each piece done as fast as you can. And people that have never done, particularly like the endless rope, the Jacob's Ladder, they're in for a surprise. They get on the thing and they're already fatigued, which kind of goes back to what we're talking about. It's you want to understand how people react when they're fatigued, not when they're fresh.
Right.
So using tools like that isn't just a matter of how fast can you do it. It's watching how they fall apart and how they handle it mentally and how their body responds to that sort of pressure. Because ultimately when they're in the cage or the ring or they're on the field, you want to know how well they're going to be able to handle that high level of fatigue and stress and putting them through something like this.
Is there something weird that you guys might do in training, like run somebody through something, maybe not that strenuous, but something like that, and then maybe throw med ball back and forth and just kind of keep them alert? Like, is there anything weird like that you guys use in your training, or is it all fairly basic training?
No, you can talk about it.
Can I just randomly throw a football at the guy's head 100 miles?
No, I mean, It's pretty straightforward. The biggest thing that I think is different than what most people are doing is that you're trying to stay present and build awareness of what your internal dialogue is, you know, how you're handling stress, whether that's fatigue or pain or whatever it may be. Because again, those things are, like Joel was saying, that's all perception. Those things are basically an emotional response, and they can be, you can ignore them and learn how to downregulate them and use that information to be useful, or you can also let it amplify and affect your performance negatively. And so it's more that instead of just focusing on the outcome, it's more the qualitative aspect of how you're doing something. Right. So it's not just, you know, how much can you crush someone and do something and miraculously make it through it.
Right.
Like, that's easy. The hard thing is to teach someone, okay, we're going to do something difficult, but I want you to keep making something that's hard easier and easier and easier, so your threshold for performance keeps improving every single time you go out, so you can handle more and more stress. You can handle more and more fatigue, and it doesn't affect you negatively. And you can continue to perform for a longer period of time or at a higher intensity. And basically everything, like on a big deal chart, it just keeps dropping down. And you can handle greater and greater levels of stress, which is ultimately, with the kind of people we train, that's what they need to be capable of doing, is like variable, kind of the extremes, and be able to do that and do just fine and not let it break them.
I mean, it's a hugely important skill. If you look at combat athletes, they're probably one of the best examples of this going wrong, because how many guys you see train their ass off for a fight, get in the cage, and one round they gas out. Why did that happen? It happens.
Seems like the hardest thing to do. You know, just go one-on-one for the fight with somebody.
It's literally because they get in that environment and their stress response takes over to the point that they overwork. They're tense, they're tight, they over-contract, they overwork. And because they perceive that as such a stressful environment, the reality is, if you're in training, it's one-on-one in a cage or a ring, and then you're in a competition, it's the same thing. Yeah. The difference is the audience and the pressure of the situation. So it's how you perceive that situation and how you talk yourself through that dictates conditioning, how you're going to perform. So like you said, it's just teaching people to have those skill sets.
Yeah, I did pro wrestling, and people don't really realize the conditioning that you need for pro wrestling. And I was always training for it. I was always lifting, I was always running, I was always doing all kinds of different things to try to keep my conditioning up. I wrestled in Tokyo, Japan, in the Tokyo Dome in front of fucking people.
Arena?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, in front of a shitload of people. And the second that I hit the ring, second I got in the ring, my legs just were completely numb. I was numb from like the waist down, just because I was so much adrenaline. Yeah. And then as soon as I started running the ropes and doing some stuff, I was gassed out like you wouldn't believe in it. I just couldn't make any sense of it. I was like, I don't understand. Yep. But it was just the nerves. I wasn't used to that much stress in that way, and so
yeah,
that's exactly what I'm talking about. Though, is that people get into those novel environments and
probably
can't handle stress.
And took a breath, and then would have probably been okay. But
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the biggest deal, is you're conditioning people so that when new and unexpected things happen, they know what that's going to feel like, they know how to control it, they know how to get back in control, so that they don't gas out, that they don't get themselves in a compromised position. You're helping train the ability to, you know, deal with and handle unknown situations really effectively, and combining that with the physical aspect of those things. I mean, the psychological game is so much more important for these guys. They need to be physically competent and capable and move efficiently, but that can't be taken away from the psychological aspect, because if they get freaked out psychologically, then that's going to screw them physically, and then it becomes this basically a circle of doom, and you're screwed at that point. Like, you can't get out of it.
Circle of doom, that sounds terrifying. We're running out of light, but this is an amazing random impromptu. I didn't realize he was going to be in town. I think he texted me a while back, and he told me,
hey, I'm here.
I know, I totally forgot, but it was great having you guys here. Where can people find you guys on the interwebs?
I'm at 8weeksout.com, bioforcehrv.com if you want to learn more about HRV. And
I'm at trainrogue.com.
Very cool. Well, it's great having you guys here, and that's it from us. Later.
Well, guess what, my friend? We will all die. We will all be in a lot of pain. It's all coming our way. It's inevitable. It's part of life. But in the meantime, you might as well be a fucking savage and live your life the way you want to live. And you might as well put your best effort and your best foot forward and train like a motherfucker. So when I said fuck you and fuck your elbow, I mean it. Fuck you and fuck your elbow. And that's it from supertraining.tv. Later.